Hulk Hogan just passed away, and the WWE superstars are letting the world know the real truth hidden behind the man once called Hollywood Hulk Hogan. John Cena, The Rock, Ric Flair, and many others have finally revealed the side of Hulk Hogan fans always predicted but never said out loud. They called him larger than life, a hero to millions, a symbol of strength, honor, and Americana. But behind the fame, behind the muscles, and behind the roar of sold-out arenas was a man who would quietly crumble under the weight of his own legend. Hulk Hogan wasn't supposed to go out like this. He was the face of professional wrestling, the reason WrestleMania even existed, the man who turned body slams into primetime entertainment. And yet, on July 24th, 2025, Terry Bollea, the man the world knew as Hulk Hogan, was no more. His death sent shockwaves across the world. But for those who have been watching closely, the warning signs had been there for years. The pain, the isolation, and above all, the battle to protect a legacy that was slipping through his fingers. Because for Hulk Hogan, the greatest fight of his life wasn't in the ring. It was after the cameras stopped rolling. In the 1980s, he was unstoppable. Every kid had a Hulk Hogan action figure. Every arena sold out. His bright yellow gear and booming voice turned him into an American icon overnight. He headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias. His presence alone helped launch the World Wrestling Federation, now WWE, into the mainstream. He wasn't just a wrestler. He was a movement. Hulkamania wasn't just a catchphrase. It was a cultural force. And when he appeared in Rocky III opposite Sylvester Stallone, his star only grew. It was proof that Hogan could cross into Hollywood and bring the wrestling audience with him. But while fans saw the glory, the grind behind the curtain was relentless. Years of body punishment, countless flights, a life lived inside arenas and hotel rooms. Still, Hogan kept going, always smiling, always flexing. He had a family, a wife, Linda, and 2 children, Brooke and Nick. For a while, they seemed like the perfect unit. In 2005, Hogan Knows Best gave fans an inside look at their home life. The show painted him as a lovable dad, tough on the outside, soft in the middle. But reality TV has a way of showing cracks. In 2007, Nick was involved in a devastating car crash that left his best friend with permanent brain damage. It was a turning point for the family and for Hogan. Just 2 years later, his marriage collapsed. The divorce was public and messy, filled with tabloid accusations and legal drama. Hogan was accused of infidelity. He denied it, but the damage was done. Suddenly, the image of the all-American hero began to blur. And yet, even with his personal life in shambles, Hogan found a way to reinvent himself and shock the world again. He left the WWF and joined WCW. And in 1996, in one of the most jaw-dropping moments in wrestling history, he turned heel. Gone was the smiling good guy. In his place, Hollywood Hogan, the leather-wearing villain who formed the infamous New World Order. The move was bold, risky, genius. It sent WCW's ratings soaring. Fans booed, but they couldn't look away. Hogan had done what no one thought possible. He made himself relevant all over again. But reinvention came at a cost. His body was breaking down. Over the next 2 decades, Hogan would undergo more than 25 surgeries. Back, hips, knees, shoulders, neck. He once joked that doctors had rebuilt him like Frankenstein. But there was nothing funny about it. He limped through autograph signings, struggled to climb into the ring. By 2020, he was walking with a cane and relying on constant physical therapy just to function. Still, he kept moving. Even in his final months, he was flying around the country to promote his new beer brand, Real American Beer. Some close to him said he was pushing too hard, that the travel and stress weren't good for his heart. But Hogan refused to slow down, because when you spend your whole life playing a superhero, it's hard to admit you're only human. When he died on that quiet Florida morning in July 2025, his son Nick called him his hero and best friend. His daughter Brooke, who had been estranged, reportedly reconnected with him before the end. The tributes came pouring in. John Cena, Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Vince McMahon, all remembered him not just as a legend, but as the man who paved the way for everything wrestling is today. Outside the ring, even stars like Sylvester Stallone and Dana White shared heartfelt messages. But as with many icons, not everyone remembered him fondly. As the years passed, the line between Hulk Hogan, the character, and Terry Bollea, the man, grew harder to separate. That confusion came to a head in 2012, when a private tape of Hogan was leaked online by Gawker Media. The footage sparked outrage, not just because of the invasion of privacy, but because of what it revealed. In a separate transcript, Hogan was heard using deeply offensive, racially charged language. The backlash was swift. In 2015, WWE terminated all ties with him. His name was erased from the Hall of Fame. His merchandise pulled. For many fans, especially black fans who had grown up idolizing him, the fallout was personal. Some said they felt betrayed. Others called it the end of Hulkamania. Hogan later apologized publicly, but the damage to his image was lasting. In a rare moment of honesty, he admitted that he had to rebuild from the bottom all over again. It wasn't just a PR crisis. It was a full collapse of the brand he'd spent 30 years building. But Hogan wasn't done fighting. He filed a lawsuit against Gawker for invasion of privacy. The trial became a national media circus. In 2016, he won big. The jury awarded him $140 million in damages. Gawker would later settle for around $31 million. It was later revealed that billionaire Peter Thiel had secretly funded Hogan's legal battle, a calculated move to take down a media empire that had once outed Thiel himself. The case ignited a massive debate around privacy, journalism, and power. And in the center of it all stood Hulk Hogan. Not in the ring, not in a movie, not on a reality show. Just a man, battered but victorious, and more complicated than ever before. He was reinstated into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2020. But the reintroduction wasn't universally embraced. Some fans cheered, others stayed silent. The scars from his past remarks hadn't fully healed, and never would for some. But to Hogan, the return was symbolic. A chance to stand tall one last time in the industry he helped build. Behind the scenes, Hogan often blurred reality and fiction. He was infamous for exaggerating his past, claiming Elvis was a fan, or that he once wrestled 400 days in a single year due to time zone changes. To some, it was just part of the show, a classic wrestling gimmick. But over time, those fabrications added to the myth and muddied the truth. Still, one thing was undeniable. Few figures in entertainment had ever reached his level of cultural impact. Yet in his final years, Hogan became almost obsessive about controlling his image. He was the subject of repeated online death hoaxes. Each time, he'd lash out publicly, demanding corrections, sometimes threatening legal action. He also became an unlikely voice in digital privacy discussions, denouncing deep fakes, AI exploitation, and the erosion of consent in online media. It was a strange twist. The same man who once lived for the spotlight now wanted boundaries. By 2023, he'd remarried, tying the knot with yoga instructor Sky Daly in a quiet Florida ceremony. And while the public still saw the grinning Hulkster at events, those close to him said the Real Terry was slowing down. His body was worn. His energy faded quickly. But there was one thing he refused to give up, his passion project. In early 2025, he launched Real American Beer, a tribute to his iconic theme song and a nod to his loyal fan base. He traveled, shook hands, posed for photos. Even when walking was difficult, he kept showing up. Some said he was pushing too hard, overcompensating. But for Hogan, it wasn't just business. It was identity. And maybe it was his last way of staying connected to the people who made him a star. His team insisted he was fine, that he loved the work. But just months later, he was gone. And when news of his passing broke, the world mourned, but not without pause. Because Hulk Hogan's death didn't just mark the end of a wrestling icon. It reopened a conversation about how we remember legends, especially the complicated ones. In the days following his passing, tributes poured in from every corner of the wrestling world. John Cena called him a trailblazer. Ric Flair described him as a once-in-a-lifetime attraction. Vince McMahon, who built the WWE empire with Hogan at the helm, shared a rare statement honoring the man he once called the greatest of all time. Even The Undertaker, known for his stoic persona, posted a heartfelt message calling Hogan a brother in arms. Outside the ring, figures like Dana White and Sylvester Stallone remembered him as a friend and a symbol of a bygone era. But not every remembrance was glowing. Some fans and critics revisited the darker chapters of his legacy, the racial slurs, the fabricated stories, the political endorsements that drew sharp divisions. And as social media lit up with nostalgia and debate, one thing became clear. Hulk Hogan left behind a complicated legacy. To some, he was a childhood hero, a symbol of simpler times. To others, he was a reminder that fame doesn't shield anyone from the consequences of their words or actions. It's hard to reconcile both, but maybe that's the truth about icons. They're not gods. They're just people, and people are messy. Behind the say your prayers and eat your vitamins image was a man who made real mistakes, but he also made real history. The spectacle of pro wrestling wouldn't be what it is today without Hulk Hogan. Before The Rock, before Stone Cold, before Roman Reigns, there was Hogan. He built the foundation, drew the first global audiences, proved that wrestling could be more than just a niche sport. It could be pop culture, And for decades, he carried that spotlight, sometimes with pride, sometimes with pain. In interviews, he often said he didn't want to be remembered for the scandals. He wanted to be remembered for making people feel something. And in that, he succeeded. Whether it was the roar of 90,000 fans in the Pontiac Silverdome, or a little kid flexing in front of the TV, mimicking their hero, Hogan made people believe in something bigger. But in the end, even the biggest icons shrink with time. In his final months, Hogan was noticeably thinner. His movement limited. He leaned on handlers more. Took longer to get through fan meet and greets. Those who saw him up close said there was still a twinkle in his eye, but it flickered more than it used to. He would still crack jokes, still call everyone brother, but his energy faded faster. And though he smiled in every photo, some wondered if he was holding on too tightly, not just to the brand, but to the identity. Because when you've been a hero to millions, who are you when the cheers stop? Maybe that's why he never really stopped working. Promoting his beer, giving interviews, attending conventions. He wasn't just chasing relevance. He was protecting a legacy that had already weathered storms most people couldn't imagine. At his core, Hogan never stopped being a showman. But when the lights finally went dark on July 24th, it was clear even the strongest among us don't get to script the ending. As tributes rolled in, so did reminders of a man who was far from perfect. For every nostalgic memory came another think piece about accountability, about how fans should balance admiration with awareness. Some wrestlers distanced themselves, others stayed silent. And while the world remembered the highs, WrestleMania, the NWO, Rocky III, it couldn't ignore the lows. The scandal, the racial slurs, the contradictions. But maybe the most telling part of Hogan's story is that, despite it all, people still showed up. Even in the final stretch of his life, when his body was deteriorating, when his controversies were fresh, when his spotlight had dimmed, he still packed rooms, still drew crowds. Why? Because to many, Hulk Hogan wasn't just a wrestler. He was the wrestler, the first name you think of when you hear professional wrestling. The bridge between the spectacle and the mainstream. The man who helped take a regional pastime and turn it into a global industry. And whether people saw him as a hero, a cautionary tale, or something in between, they felt something. He stirred emotions. He created moments. He mattered. In a strange way, Hogan's story is like the wrestling business itself. Theatrical, larger than life, unpredictable, and not always real. But the impact? That was real. The hospital visits to sick kids. The way he made shy fans feel seen. The charities, the meet and greets, the smiles he sparked across generations. Even as his own body fell apart, Hogan kept showing up, kept trying to give people the Hulkster they remembered. Because when you spend your whole life being a symbol, letting go of the cape isn't easy. And maybe that's what made his ending so poignant. Not the flash, not the controversies, but the quiet reality that even the strongest eventually fall. That even heroes get tired. That even icons fade. In Clearwater, Florida, just days before his passing, a fan at a small event said Hogan looked tired but peaceful. He still cracked jokes, still gave the classic brother nod, but there was a softness, a stillness, like he knew. And maybe he did. Maybe that's why he kept moving, kept shaking hands, kept selling his beer, kept smiling through the pain. Because he wanted to go out doing what he always did, entertaining the crowd. And when he finally passed, alone in his home, it wasn't the end of a man. It was the end of an era, one that helped shape pop culture, redefine sports entertainment, and teach the world that even fiction can leave behind real emotion. So how do we remember Hulk Hogan? As a hero? A flawed man? A cautionary tale? A symbol of an age that no longer exists? Maybe he was all of those things. And maybe that's the real legacy. That a man in a bandana and yellow boots could become something so much bigger than himself, then spend the rest of his life try to live up to it. Let us know in the comments what you think of his story. And if you enjoyed this, subscribe for more Forgotten Legends.